Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome to Paizo Friday. My name's Dan. I'm behind the computer today, and you'll see why in just a little bit. We've got some special guests for you. They'll have a really good discussion titled Writing for Paizo, and so it's super exciting. I wanted to take a little bit of time just to welcome you to the show. Thanks to some of you for joining us yesterday on the Gen Con stream. That was a lot of fun. And also I wanted to say how much fun we had at PaizoCon a couple weeks ago. It was a blast. We got to hang out with a lot of the fans that came out, and that was fun. We got to play a lot of games with everybody. The Glass Cannon folks were there. Taylor Fisher, our guest artist, was there. I actually commissioned a portrait from her, and it looks amazing. So that was one of the highlights, I think, is getting to meet all of you guys, the fans, and being able to play games and just hanging out and chatting. So thank you for coming to PaizoCon if you made it out. If you didn't, we will see you next year. Of course, you're going to want to be there because it's PaizoCon, and we love to do that. So yeah, I just wanted to say hi real quick, and then without further ado, I've got Adam Daigle and Amanda Hamon Kunz in the studio today. And like I said before, they're going to be talking about writing for Paizo and writing in general. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to these folks.
Hi everybody, I'm Adam Daigle. I'm Managing Developer for Pathfinder.
And I'm Amanda Hamon Kunz. I am Managing Developer for Starfinder.
And we're here today to talk about writing for Paizo. This is a seminar that we've done a number of times at both PaizoCon and Gen Con. We're always looking for new authors, so one of the ways that we get people in here is to let people know how to do it.
Yeah, and we wanted to start a little bit with some very basics, an overview of writing for Paizo, some important information that you need to know before you consider potentially reaching out to us or potentially embarking on a freelance career if you haven't already. And so one of those main things.
One of the main things is we do not accept unsolicited submissions. So if you send us something, and it's, a lot of this is legal issues, like if you send me a document, I'm not going to open it. I'm just going to delete that email because I don't want someone coming back later on saying, hey, you stole this idea from me.
Yeah, and another important thing along those lines is that we do not accept pitches for new products or for pieces of products. We have very tight deadlines here at Paizo. We have products that are planned out months, if not years in advance. And so you, if you become a freelancer for us, you write to spec and you get assignments. So you might, maybe later on when you get established, we might work with you a little bit for some sort of pitch, but starting out, that's not the most effective way to approach us. Having familiarity with our game is pretty important.
Knowing the game is really important. Not only just knowing the mechanics of the game, but also knowing our setting. If you write something that is obviously related to some other property, that's not going to play well with our setting. It's not going to work. That's just something that a developer is going to have to end up rewriting.
Yeah, we need our freelancers to be very well versed in, like Adam said, not only the campaign setting in the world in which the material is taking place, but also with the rules of the game, the way the physics of the universe that you're writing for work, to be conversant with that and to be able to turn over words, in some way that are going to be usable for us that we don't need to rewrite. And so we wanted to give folks a little bit of an insight into the development process here at Paizo because we realize that a lot of that is behind the curtain and difficult to maybe understand if you're just kind of reading the book. So we wanted to talk a little bit about how just the process works of getting assignments and how the books are sort of made so that you can take that into account when you're thinking about approaching us to be a freelancer.
Yeah, and like what Amanda was saying about, don't pitch a product. And because a lot of that stuff's already planned out is, excuse me, we do have our schedule planned out for, sometimes an entire year, 2 years down the line, depending on some products. And a lot of the ways that all starts is we get our creative team together and we do some brainstorms about what kind of topics we want to touch, what kind of subjects we want to deal with, different kinds of rules elements we want to throw in. And some of those are really fun brainstorms where we just have everyone just shouting out different ideas and we'll fill up a whiteboard full of things. And then that distills down and we take that up to the next tier up with managers and publisher and executives even, and get some of those things approved. And once we get products that we know, okay, we're going to do this book on this topic, then a developer goes by and writes out an outline. And then from that outline determines how many people we need writing for it, who can take what, and we reach out to our pool of freelancers, give out the assignment, then it comes back to us. Then we go through and we, do some tweaks, make sure that it's all matching our mechanics, it's matching our world, it's in good, proper English, and then kick it on through the rest of the production process, which involves art and edit.
Yeah, and when we're looking for freelancers to fill the ranks of a project, we're often really looking for the right freelancers for that specific project. So getting it on the ground floor, we do have some beginning assignments that make sense, but in general, we're looking for what type of material is this? Is this very steeped in a certain part of the setting? Is this a very specific type of mechanic? And then we use our experience and the discussions that we've had with freelancers and potential freelancers to determine who would really be the best fit for that assignment. We really want people to work on the things that they're interested in. And so we'll mention this later on, but part of talking to us and approaching us is letting us know who you are and what you're interested in and what you like and what you have experience with. This is a fun industry and we want folks to have fun with the assignments that they're doing. So let's talk a little bit now about the qualifications for becoming a freelancer and what the path might look like to working for us or for another company.
Right. Yeah. A lot of the material that we do, and almost all of our, maybe not almost all, but a large number of our freelancers are people that we've identified as, having already had credits. A lot of times it's not even necessarily with us before, but, like with other companies that we're friends with, like Cobalt Press and Legendary Games, are two examples. If I see that someone's done work for them, then I'll reach out to Wolfgang or Jason and be like, hey, so how was this turnover?
Yeah.
Because I'm going to steal this person.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, third-party experience, like what Adam just described, is really impressive to us. And many of the people that we've hired, probably most of the people that we hired came from some sort of third-party background of having months or years of writing for other publications that use the same rules that we're using or in some way are related to what we're doing with Pathfinder or Starfinder. Specifically, I think like just having writing samples that have been published.
Absolutely.
Third parties are really invaluable for that because it is it's a very niche type of writing, and so you can prove to us through a third-party credit that you're doing the kind of work that we're really wanting to hire you to do in the first place for us.
There have been times that I've been approached by someone at a show or something, and I might not recognize the name, but then they've presented like and I've done all of this, and it's like, oh, okay, you've done a body of work.
Yeah.
I'm interested in that now. But just, having things published in third-party products isn't the only way to go about it. I mean, we've grabbed freelancers who have had long-running blogs or something like that. As long as you have something that you can point to where we can get an example of what kind of work you do and the quality of your work, that's really, really important, I think.
Yeah, and I think a lot of folks who have experience writing for fanzines or for blogs, like you mentioned, with Wayfinder being a very
Wayfinder's perfect.
Yeah, exactly. That is a really good way to signal to us that you are passionate about what we're doing. If you're writing for a fanzine, you're probably writing something about in Galarian or in the Pact Worlds on the Starfinder side, and so that really lets us know that you're not only specifically interested in nebulously writing for the game industry, you're really interested in the things that Paizo is doing, and that's important to us to know. So let's see, what other
I have something.
Yeah, go for it.
So to give a little personal anecdote, how did you first get into doing freelance work?
Oh, wow. So I actually came from a professional background of publishing and writing. I was a journalist for several years before I started doing freelance game work, but I had played D20 games and D10 games for that matter for years and years and years beforehand, and was really looking to make a career change, and figured that I could use my professional skills to maybe do something I really enjoyed, which which would be tabletop, which would specifically be D20 and Pathfinder. And so I had been going to Gen Con for years as a fan. And then in 2011, I determined that I was going to go around and make contacts, and I had business cards that had my title, on them. And I met with several folks at different companies, and one of them was Wes Schneider at Paizo, who I didn't have any game credits, but I was able to point to all sorts of publications that had my name on them, and give him a sense of my background and what I was experiencing and passionate about. And he took a chance on me and asked me to send some pitches, which then turned into monster assignments for the Skull and Shackles Adventure Path. Yep. Yeah, all those years ago. But that's certainly not the only way to get it done. Can you talk a little bit about your background?
Well, mine's kind of similar to yours. I know that going to conventions is, cost prohibitive for a lot of people, but it's a great way to meet tons of publishers and other freelancers and just to get a feel for what the biz is. I totally admit I've gamed for a long time, but I've never really paid close attention to the industry, and I didn't realize that so much gaming material is written on a freelance basis.
Yeah.
And so I was, hanging out on the Paizo.com forums and, making friends with people like that, and people were like, man, you should really try to, freelance. And I was like, wait, what? That's a thing? I can write about wizards and dragons?
Yeah.
And make money? Okay, sure.
Yeah, right?
And so I didn't know exactly how to go about it. And so I went to Gen Con by myself first in 2007. First time I've ever been to a big show like that. Didn't know anybody, but I went with the plan of okay, I'm going to meet publishers. I'm going to try to get,
That's what I did too.
I'm going to try to figure this out.
Yep.
And sure enough, a month after I got back from the show, I got my first hey, would you like to write a thing? And I was like, yes, I would. Thank you.
Yeah. And one of the things that was really surprising to me going through that process personally was the fact that there's so much work out there and there are so many publishers who are publishing things and doing cool things, and the volume of stuff that's available, that if you establish yourself as a reliable freelancer who does good work on time, to spec, and is easy to work with, that you can get a lot of assignments and you can go a really far way very quickly. And so of course that's not going to be everybody's experience, but it is out there, it is possible.
And that leads into something else, is one thing that's really smart way to get into writing what you want for a certain company is identify the type of companies that you do want to write material for. This goes beyond just writing for Paizo, but because a lot of them will have submission guidelines, and so check out their website, see what type of material they're looking for, how to format it, and stuff like that. But even more importantly is if they do take submissions and pitches and stuff like that, look at their body of work. Look at what they've done, what they've put out for the last few years, to make sure that you're not pitching an idea that they just did 6 months ago.
Yeah, for sure. Another thing that is, I think, important to keep in mind that most people might be a little skittish about at first is to not be afraid to use your personal background and your experiences to really just inform your work and do the things that make you really passionate, and do those pitches of products that you've always wanted to see, or articles that you really think should exist in a fanzine or something. We have people here at Paizo who are from all professional backgrounds, and I think that is really kind of the strength of our creative team, because we have people who were journalists, and we have people who were graphic designers, and we have people who were architects, and people who were in the service industry, and just all over the place. So writing your own experiences is a thing that fiction writers talk about a lot, but it's true to a certain extent in RPGs as well.
And one thing also to be cautious of, it's real easy to get super excited on your first few things.
Yes.
And you don't have to cram everything in there. Really, when you get that first assignment, you don't have to put all of your best in there and just tack things on, because there's been times where early on, I wasted ideas that I could have done so much better now.
Yeah.
But I already did it 10 years ago, and that's not the best place.
Yeah, we have a term for it here in the office. It's really a hallmark of a new freelancer. It's called going wahoo. And it's when the new freelancer wants to do all of the cool things and use all of the different systems and all of the crazy out there ideas they have in a 1,400 word monster write-up. and it just doesn't work. So before you give into that temptation, maybe pull it back a little bit.
One of our newer freelancers had made the analogy of putting 10 pounds of stuff in a 5-pound bag.
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty
and
apt.
he was admitting that
Yep.
he was trying to do that, was like, okay, I knew I had to roll this back a little.
Yeah, yeah, no, and that's also a hallmark of a good new freelancer, is knowing that that temptation is there, but the developers are going to sniff that out immediately. So maybe pull it back a little bit
Right.
before you turn in your assignments. But we do value everybody's personal and professional backgrounds at Paizo. And we want a diversity of voices,
Absolutely.
and so really embracing that is very impressive to us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do we want to talk a little bit about approaching us once you
Yeah,
have
that's
decided
actually-
you want to
yeah.
write for us? Sure. Well, conventions is one that we were just
Yes.
talking about.
And if you're at a convention, one thing that's super important if you want to get into doing freelance is have a business card. Or if you don't have a business card, write your email on a slip of paper, something. Like, business card is better. It's way more professional. You don't need to get fancy. You don't need to have the laser engraved wooden things. Sure, I'll remember it, but a card that has contact information is perfect, and blank space is really good, because one of the things that I like to do whenever someone gives me a business card and I meet them and I'm talking to them on the floor of the show is, a lot of times the conversation is like, oh, what kind of material do you like to write? Oh, you like to write monsters? And I'll jot that down on the card,
Yeah.
because I get a lot of cards at shows, and
Yep.
I need to know who was who. Like, oh, was this that woman I was talking to about monster design, or was it, you know?
Yeah, the more that you can talk to us and have a conversation and sort of give us a sense of who you are as a writer and what you're interested in, and why you're interested in Paizo, or however you'd like to frame it when you talk to us, the more that we can just make that memory click when we get back from the convention. We've got the 20 business cards that we've put on the table, and we're going through them. Any way that you can differentiate yourself, or write down something on your business card and give it to us, that's going to be a helpful tip for you.
Something else that's really good practice to do is when you get back from the show, maybe not that very next day, but within that week after, like Gen Con, for example, send an email. Like if I gave you my card and if we exchanged cards, send an email and be like, hey, I talked to you.
Yeah.
We talked about this. I'm interested in writing, and then, because that just helps. It helps me remember.
Yeah.
It helps keep your face fresh. That's one of the things is, like, if you're trying to get work from a developer, it's good to put yourself out there. But it's also good to not do too much.
Yeah, for sure. And also on the subject of emailing us, of course we understand that going to conventions is not viable for everyone for many different reasons. But another point of contact is emails, right?
Right.
And we have a contact page on Paizo.com in which you can find the email addresses of all the folks who are here you might be interested in talking to. But don't just send us an email with your name and that you'd like to freelance, because odds are that it's going to be difficult to respond to something like that.
Right.
It's important to include some basic information in that email, such as maybe a short elevator pitch like we just described, but also attachments that are samples of your work, or other qualifications that you might have that you want us to know about, like a professional background or something.
Yeah, a list of previous credits and stuff like that.
Yeah. So as far as samples goes, that's also an interesting topic, because it seems like it's pretty simple, but there are some good practices and some bad practices for sending samples. What are some of the best samples, the most effective samples that you've gotten?
I really like seeing, and this is something I try out new authors on monsters a lot, and so I like seeing stuff like monsters because it shows a capability to work with mechanics, but also it has a narrative element, and it shows some of your flavor and some of, descriptive ability. So any type of material like that is really good, and particularly because it's short, because after Gen Con, if I get 40 people sending me 6,000 word articles, chances are I'm not going to go through all that. But if you send me something that's like a page or two of material, then I will most likely
Yeah, absolutely.
read it all.
Yeah, the more that you can laser focus your samples on what specifically you want to do for us, the more effective your samples will be. It is really difficult for me to receive 3 PDFs as a sample from somebody, and each of them are somebody's indie role-playing game that they've written, and then like a school paper that they wrote for a narrative section, and then a stat block from another game system that's not something that we publish. While that does show a very impressive range of being able to do work and publish things, that doesn't tell me a lot about capabilities of what they want to do for us.
Right.
And so it's hard to kind of ferret out exactly what how they're going to do if we give them an assignment. And so then there's sort of the barrier of, okay, well, I need to then follow up, and then maybe they need to resend me something else. And the longer that chain goes on, the harder it is for us to work with somebody and just to keep those replies up, just because of the pace of the office being what it is.
Right. And yeah, and like, well, actually, I'm totally off mark, so.
I see a question in chat from Amber Vale, who says that they've seen that 500 to 1,000 words as a recommendation for a sample size.
Sounds great to me.
Yeah, that sounds great. And honestly, like 2 or 3 short things, definitely under probably that 1,000 word count, is perfect, because you might have stat blocks, then you might have like a short write-up or an adventure thing, and then you might have some other kind of rules element or something, depending on what it is that you write. That's going to be a really good look into what you can do, and we might see a lot of potential in that sort of thing. Seeing potential is really kind of a big part of why you're sending us your sample.
Yeah.
In the first place.
Yeah, and seeing potential, and like I enjoy when people are like highly motivated, when people like really know what they want, and
Yeah, I know there's it seems like there's a very large tendency among prospective freelancers who just say, I just want to write anything, I just want to work for Paizo, I just want to write whatever you have available. And sometimes that's very true. Like that was very true for me when I got started.
That was me, yeah.
But it's also helpful if you say, I'm open to anything, but I'm really interested in monsters, or I'm really interested in Starfinder class features, or I'm really interested in aliens or something like that. That really helps us kind of direct exactly where we think you should start out. And speaking of starting out, it might be worth getting into what early assignments look like, and just some basics of maybe dealing with developers once you've kind of gotten your foot into the door.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, a lot of times, I'm just going to talk my own experience, because I ran the back matter for the APs for a long time. And one of the things that I would definitely do is try out new authors on monsters. Sometimes it would be, all right, pitch me 10 ideas for monsters, and I'll pick a few. And sometimes, of those 10, I'd pick 1 or 2, and then someone would blow me away, and I'd be like, okay, I want like 4 or 5 of these.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so sometimes you do actually get the ability to pitch. Sometimes it's, I know I want to do a CR4 Fae that would fit in with Cheliax or whatever. And sometimes I might have more of an idea than that, and I would send this out in an outline form where it's like, okay, you have, this many words to give me this thing. And so it's sometimes it can be super specialized, sometimes you can get a little bit more freedom, but a lot of times you're writing for spec. That's almost, guaranteed.
Yeah, it's usually very specific that we we know that it's a new freelancer, and so we've got a creature that's really perfect for somebody who's kind of learning the ropes. And then we can kind of help you along the way as you have questions about the process and about what the assignment needs to be. But for that matter, I think communication, that kind of touches a little bit on how important communication really is once you have talked to a developer, you've sent in your samples, you've got your first assignment. It's likely probably going to be maybe a monster assignment, or maybe a spread and a player companion for Pathfinder, maybe an alien or something in the back matter for the Starfinder adventure path. It varies, but it's usually something short.
Right.
Pretty much always.
Because if it's someone who we haven't worked with and we don't know how the work's going to be, or there have been times that someone has gotten a gig and got a contract and just didn't deliver. Maybe that got cold feet, or maybe something happened. But there's been times where nothing came in.
Yeah.
And in that case, the reason that we do small pieces is that sometimes you got to write it on the clock to make that to make it work. And writing 1,400 words or 4,000 words for something that just didn't materialize is way easier than anything more bigger and more substantial.
Yeah, that's true. As far as the process of working with us once you've gotten your assignment, we get a lot of questions from new people about, well, how much emailing is too much and how much feedback should I expect? The general process of an assignment typically goes from, you've got your assignment from your developer, you've gotten your contract, you've returned your contract, and then you have a milestone, what's called a milestone deadline, and then you have your final deadline. And then that milestone deadline is a date by which you should have about half of your word count complete in any sort of various forms, depending on what the assignment is, but roughly half of your word count. And that's your opportunity for your developer to check in on how your assignment is going, and also your opportunity to ask questions, right, about maybe what the assignment means or where you should go from where you're at, or any other general questions that you have. But that's not the only time you can ask questions.
Right. Yeah. No. You
process.
can. Yeah. Throughout the process, you can email your developer and make sure just if you're kind of veering off the outline a little bit, it's always good to ask.
Yeah, for sure.
Because and that's part of what a milestone is good for, is that it allows us to course correct if you're getting too far off, off the direction of what we're going for. And there's also emailing too much.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is I would say that certainly emailing every day and asking for feedback on your assignment is the fastest way to probably annoy your developer, because you have to keep in mind that your developer likely is working with 4 or 5 or even more other freelancers on that one specific assignment, and you don't know what other assignments they might be dealing with for projects. So keeping in mind that there's a certain amount of volume of email that is just going to be too overwhelming. And so trying to keep questions that you might have in batches, and certainly, adhering to the request of the developer if they ask for 2 milestones, or if you ask them some questions and the developer answers and says, well, let me know what you think about this or that. It's important to kind of always keep that sort of good faith communication flowing, because otherwise we don't necessarily know what you're doing or what you're thinking. Yeah, but yeah, you shouldn't be afraid to email your developer, but also there is definitely a line, because we are certainly very busy.
Very, very busy.
Yeah. Let's see. Deadlines, of course, are important to hitting your milestone.
Live and die by deadlines.
Yep. So once you're done, asking for feedback is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
You will probably get some feedback at some point, as our pace has sort of changed and become, we've worked that in a little better into the process, but we are still moving at a really fast clip. So if you don't get feedback right away, asking for feedback is certainly not taboo. In fact, we want to give people feedback so that they can know how to improve.
Yes.
Correct. But what you do with that feedback is also important.
Yes.
Yeah.
Don't make the same mistakes twice, for sure. And I'm terrible. I admit it, about giving feedback. I never seem to have the time.
Same.
But if we've given someone an assignment, we want to work with them. We want to get them to do better work. Not saying that work initially was bad, but everyone can improve. Everyone can learn more, and the more that your work aligns with what we're looking for, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. And, getting a feedback email that is really long is not a sign that you screwed up. It's more a sign that we really want to work with you and we really enjoy working with you, and we want to help you develop into a regular freelancer, that we can rely on for a wide variety of things. So taking all that stuff seriously and adjusting, your work as requested is really, really helpful and impressive to us, but also taking that feedback graciously and understanding that, it's not a personal attack when we ask you to stop using passive voice. It's not anything personal against you. These are just things that we notice that can help you improve and be a better freelancer, for us to give more future assignments to. And letting us know when you're available is always good. Once you've gotten an assignment or two, it helps us sort of go through the list of who's around when we have specific assignments to give out.
For example, right now, we have a few of our regular freelancers that are teachers.
Yeah.
And so
we
after
do,
PaizoCon, I got a number of emails. It's like, hey, so this summer would be a really good time to get some work.
Yeah, and I love hearing that, because that is a long chunk of time when I know that this person wants stuff, and so as I have things that come up, it's like I know they're available because they said they are for the next 3 months. So that's really helpful information to have. But one other thing before maybe we take questions that I feel like is also a pitfall for new people is knowing their limitations and knowing when to tell us no, right?
Yeah.
You want to talk a little bit about that?
One of the things, like the very first time I said no to an assignment, I was terrified because I thought that work would just dry up. I thought, okay, I told them no, they're never going to offer me a thing.
Yeah.
But my developer at the time wrote back to me and was just like, no, I totally respect that. And honestly, thank you for knowing what you could and couldn't take. Because it's real easy to get super excited and take on a lot of work. And, sure, a little 5,000 word thing here and a 6,000 word thing here and a 1,400, doesn't seem like a lot, but when you pile it all together, one of those deadlines is not going to get hit. And
yeah, absolutely.
Saying no to something that you're not going to complete is way better than missing a deadline.
Yeah. Once you start getting a reputation for somebody who misses deadlines or who is consistently late, that is information that spreads like wildfire throughout the department. And we all talk to each other and we all ask for recommendations from other developers. And if we are on a really tight turnaround, if project management says the text must be in by this date, and we give you this date and you're a week late and then you're a week late again, we're going to stop taking chances after a certain period of time.
Right.
So it's really important to prioritize being able to make those deadlines over wanting to say yes to everything, which I understand because I was the same way.
So hard.
It is so hard. It really is. But yeah, keeping in mind that, that's our concern from our end. And so maybe don't always say yes if the answer is not really yes. Let's see. Do we have some questions from chat?
Something that says, do any assignments involve writing for/creating NPCs? Sort of, but it's usually attached to an adventure. A lot of times that we do anything, like anytime that we do like a standalone NPC is typically like in Pathfinder Adventure Path, and the adventure author is the one that typically writes those.
There are some exceptions, and the biggest one I can think of right now is probably the campaign setting for Pathfinder. So we have done a number of just like very hyper-specific concepts of campaign settings recently. Intercity Taverns is one I'm thinking of, where we had each tavern sort of as a little mini adventure location, and then we had NPCs. We had 2 NPCs in each section, and so in that case, those NPCs actually got stats, and they got backstories, and they got woven into that adventure location about, why they would be there and what sort of intrigue might be going on there, or what sort of conflict might be happening, to give adventure seeds. So, even though like the traditional 1,400 word one spread NPC write-ups are pretty limited to adventure paths, there are other exceptions where you might be asked to do an NPC stat block. So if you're approaching us, letting us know you really like NPCs and you really like writing character backgrounds, that's valuable information, I think, for us to know as well.
Yeah.
Let's see, what other questions we have?
Secret Gamer Girl answered that one, so
that's good. Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. Do we see Pathfinder Playtest serving as a means to display system talent and stepping toward freelancing? Well, I guess maybe if there are folks who are using those rules when they come out to do their own thing and putting that out there on a fan site or something, then that might be a way.
Where they were.
That's like up toward the top of the screen. Yeah, I mean, certainly Second Edition is giving us a good opportunity to sort of not clean the slate, but definitely bring in folks who, haven't been around forever and ever, and bring in new people who are interested in freelancing for that specific new system. So in that respect, I think it is a big opportunity for us as well.
And one of my hopes with Second Edition is that it is a lot more accessible and that, a broader, more diverse crowd gets into the game. And if people are, if we're getting people into the game, then we're going to, want people to write for it as well. And so, and I still want to see a lot of those voices.
Yeah, for sure. There was another question that's what's the normal turnaround time, which is kind of interesting because it varies by line, right?
Right.
It varies by line, it varies by just the schedule, and it varies kind of even on like who's the person working on the book and when.
And sometimes it can end up in certain circumstances where you
Yep.
end up, if
That's
you,
interesting. Why don't you talk a little bit about how you were Wes's go-to for
and
years?
then you
And then it was
also,
me.
No, one of the things, if you hit your deadlines and you, even turn things in early,
Yeah.
and do good work, you have the curse of competence where you might get an email at 6 p.m. on a Friday that says, OMG, I need Monster by Monday. And you're like,
Yep.
all right, I can do that.
Yep, yeah. Yeah, really establishing yourself as somebody who's reliable with those kinds of assignments is a good way to stand out early on to people. But that also is not meant to contradict what I said before, which was know your limitations. So, sometimes I'm sure the answer for you is probably, I can't this weekend,
Right.
I'm going somewhere, my in-laws are coming over, or whatever, and, we always are going to respect that. So don't be worried about saying no.
Yeah, like an adventure, like for the different style or different lengths of things, an adventure path adventure typically gets 2 to 3 months writing time. A 6-page back matter article can be done in a couple of weeks, but
Yeah,
I
it's
like to
usually
give
a
people
month, right?
I like to give people a month
Yeah.
just to have a little extra space.
Yeah, sure. So there was another question here that is interesting. Someone saying they had an idea for an adventure path. Should they be writing storyline and stat blocks or just story? So that kind of goes back to what we said at the top of the
Right.
stream, that we can't actually take pitches. Well, we don't take pitches for products, and we can't take unsolicited manuscripts. So your ideas are awesome, but there probably are third-party publishers out there that are better suited to publish that scope of an idea or a project.
However, should it be writing storyline and stat blocks or just story? Any adventures that we write, we don't have one person writing the narrative and one person doing the mechanics.
True, yeah.
A freelancer's expected to be competent at both narrative and mechanics at the same time.
And if you're writing adventures for us, also mapping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Cartography. Yeah. But sort of a caveat to that is that adventure path assignments are really our top tier of assignments. It takes a long time, usually, for a freelancer to get the experience that they need to let us know that they're capable of an assignment of that caliber. Simply because it's a huge assignment, usually 30 to 40,000 words for Pathfinder, probably 20 to 30 for Starfinders, or a little shorter.
And as two people who've recently pulled their hair out over very large adventure path assignments.
It's a huge undertaking. So certainly that's a great goal to have, but it's going to be a while, with maybe an exception, but a very rare exception, that you would get one, quicker rather than, taking a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see. Someone says, could we talk a little bit about comments for developers on turnovers? Yeah, that's a great idea. So word comments is what I think maybe they mean.
Maybe.
But yeah, when you're turning in an assignment, using Word, which you should be using Word if you're not, leaving comments for developers is really, really useful for us, right? Everything from calling out where you've used established canon and citing the source. Yes, okay, Word comments. To also comments about, the fact that you've entirely made up something new, or
That's one of the things. So helpful.
Yeah, it is, because our canon is enormous at this point, and even a lot of Starfinder canon will sometimes mention a canon from Pathfinder. So calling out that stuff is really good. Comments about maybe decisions that you made in stat blocks might be good, just to kind of let us know what you're thinking.
Spelling out the math for magic item.
Oh, that's it. Yeah,
calculation,
we ask people to do that in our outlines usually. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, comments are great. There is also the same risk of overloading, because every once in a while there are so many comments that it's hard for me to even read the text, and so being choosy about what comments you're leaving is good. Important information for the developers take precedent over just like a comment about why you think this is neat, because obviously you think it's neat, you turned it in.
It says, what type of work are freelancers most needed for? Well, as far as Amanda and I are concerned, it's writing the material that's in our books.
Yeah, everything in our books is freelanced. We have internal folks who are also freelancers, but people don't write on the clock.
Yeah.
So everything is freelanced out, and that would be campaign settings, player companions. This is for Pathfinder. the adventure paths, the back matter for the adventure paths, Starfinder adventure paths, Starfinder back matter, Starfinder hardcovers, all of that stuff for the most part is freelance.
Yep.
So we have a very large volume of things to assign for folks. Citing sources. So citing sources, you don't actually need to use AMA or MLA or any other official thing. We really just want like a comment bubble with, what book it came from with the page number. That's all we need. It's a functional thing. It's not an official bibliography or anything.
Right.
I mean, I don't think we ever required anything like that.
No.
You don't need to take that much, much time.
And it is linking into citations and stuff like that.
Yeah.
This is just a little pro tip. Don't use more than like 2 sources for a stat block, because you don't, practicality use at the table, you don't want a GM having to reference 3 or 4 different books just to run one villain. Also, it's just, you don't want to expect the reader to own all of the stuff that you happen to own.
Yeah, and for that matter, we literally have a limit of how many little superscripts we can use. Is it 10 now?
Yeah,
It's 10.
I argued for 10.
Yeah, and that's over the course of an entire book. So an entire 96-page volume or 64-page volume or whatever it is. Using 6 sources in one stat block for a throwaway MOOC is probably not a good idea, because you're going to blow all your sources in one stat block. Let's see, what other questions we have? How much money do freelancers make? Well, anyway, we pay very fair rates, very competitive for the industry, probably some of the best rates in the industry. So it is going to be, better than what you might see from other smaller companies.
But not like what Condé Nast pays for magazine.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to support, a family of 6 on a freelancer salary from one company. That's for sure. Yeah. Let's see.
I think we said our society scenarios assigned to freelancers. Yes, absolutely.
They all are.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, and so those all have their own specific specs, really, and their own needs and requirements for that line, so to speak. And so our organized play developers are the keepers of all of that, and they've got their own style guides, and they've got their own requirements for that stuff. And honestly, organized play experience in general is really, really valuable for a freelancer. Of course, if you want to write those scenarios, that's very valuable, but it's also very valuable to writing for the other lines. Starfinder Society is very valuable if you want to write Starfinder material. Pathfinder Society is very valuable if you want to write Pathfinder material, because it gets you practical working experience with the system and a look at play styles that you might not be familiar with from players who are from organized play, and it really makes you a better writer. I considered it professional development before I was hired to play Pathfinder Society as much as I could, just because of all the things I could learn and all of the reactions that I could see to the types of writing at the table was really valuable. So if you're into organized play, it's a great way to sort of boost your credentials or your abilities as a freelancer.
And frankly, it's super rewarding to go into a big convention hall where they're running the thing that you wrote and just watch 100 tables all playing, something that you wrote. That's super rewarding.
Yeah, that is super fun. So Night Tree says, do you have a welcome to freelancing packet you send to the noobs? We sort of do. We've got a writing for Paizo section in the back of every outline that we send out, and that's true across both games and all of the lines. And a lot of it is this information that we've laid out, and a lot of it is very practical information, things to avoid that you might not necessarily realize you should avoid in your turnovers, such as don't use Easter eggs from other intellectual properties, legal purposes, and some other sort of basic things like that. So we do have that information available, but it's mostly not really secret. We talk about it a lot here.
Yeah, and also this video is going to serve as that in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see, any other questions? How often are there opportunities for someone to transition from freelancer to employee? It's really random.
Yeah, it's kind of whenever we have a position here.
Yeah.
Now, me being a freelancer, I'm absolutely certain helped Wes choose me for this job, and the same for you.
Yeah.
So and recently Amanda and I hired a lot of new developers, and
5.
Almost all of them have written for us before.
Yep.
Yeah. So that it's a good track.
Yeah. There's certainly a lot of vectors into getting into the creative side, but I think freelancing is probably the most reliable one because as a small industry, and most of us all know each other, and even if we haven't worked with you directly, we've likely heard of you if you've been around for a little while or you've written for a lot of companies, and so just building that rapport within the industry is a really good way to be sort of at the top of the minds of folks when positions do come up. And we also do blind tests to make sure that we are getting the most talented and qualified folks in here. And it turns out that usually those people are already freelancers for us.
Right.
So that's always fun. Let's see. Any other questions? Any other questions before we head out of here? Let's see. I think that's pretty much it. You see anything?
Yeah. No, I'm not seeing anything.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us.
And thanks for the other people in the chat that are giving answers to some of the questions that people are asking.
Yeah, that's really
nice. So far,
nice.
I haven't seen any misinformation. So thanks, Amber and Secret Gamer Girl, for helping out with some of that.
Yeah, thank you guys.